The child's screams echoed through the Galactic Tribunal's chambers as the alien executioner raised his plasma lance. Seconds later, the small, fragile life was extinguished, and a deafening silence fell over the assembly. Earth watched in horror, powerless to intervene. But this heinous act would not go unanswered. From the depths of Earth's forgotten archives, ancient warships stirred to life, and a furious humanity prepared to unleash a storm that would shake the cosmos. This was not just vengeance. It was justice delivered with the firepower of centuries-old secrets. The Galactic Tribunal was meant to uphold peace across the stars, a council of advanced civilizations tasked with mediating disputes and ensuring interstellar harmony. But to many, it had become a symbol of tyranny, an elite group enforcing their will on younger, lesser species. Humanity had always walked a fine line within the tribunal, respected for its ingenuity, but often dismissed as a fledgling race that needed guidance. That illusion shattered the day the tribunal executed an Earth child. It began with a minor incident on the planet Vreston IV, a lush, alien world renowned for its sacred monuments. A human exploration team, including families and children, was conducting research on the planet under strict guidelines. Among them was 9-year-old Jace Keller, a curious and spirited boy who wandered too close to a revered monument. According to the tribunal's laws, desecration of holy sites, even accidental, was a grave offense. The child's actions were deemed a violation despite humanity's protests. Earth's ambassadors pleaded for reason, offering reparations and explanations, but the tribunal refused to listen. To make an example of humanity, they sentenced the child to death. On the day of the execution, the Galactic Tribunal broadcasted the event across every member system. The image of Jace standing before the alien executioner, his small frame trembling but defiant, would be burned into the collective memory of Earth forever. When the plasma lance struck, the sight of his lifeless body collapsing onto the tribunal floor broke something deep within humanity. Back on Earth, outrage erupted. Cities filled with protests, cries for justice and demands for action. The Earth's United Defense Command, typically measured and cautious, convened in an emergency session. General Elias Ward, a stoic figure known for his unflinching resolve, addressed the room. "This isn't just about Jace Keller," Ward began, his voice steady but charged with anger. "The tribunal has crossed a line. They've demonstrated their willingness to extinguish innocent lives to enforce their dominance. We cannot and will not allow this to stand." Among the gathered military leaders, Admiral Kara Sterling was the first to speak up. "We've always kept the Aegis initiative classified," she said, her tone hesitant. "It was our last resort. Are we sure this is the time to reveal it?" The Aegis initiative was a name that few outside the room had ever heard. It referred to Earth's hidden fleet of warships, massive, technologically advanced vessels developed in the early days of humanity's expansion into space. Conceived during an era of interstellar uncertainty, the Aegis Fleet had been mothballed and buried beneath the Martian surface after humanity joined the Galactic Tribunal. As a show of goodwill and a pledge of peace. "They killed a child," General Ward said, his words weighted with finality. "If this isn't the time, there will never be one. Signal the activation codes." As the decision was made, Earth's leadership transmitted a final message to the Galactic Tribunal. It was a simple statement, broadcasted in every major galactic language. "Humanity will not bow. Expect us." Across Earth, Mars and its orbital colonies, ancient hangars and underground facilities roared to life. Deep beneath the rust-colored plains of Mars, immense doors, long concealed under layers of dust and rock, groaned open for the first time in centuries. Engineers and soldiers, sworn to secrecy for generations, emerged from the shadows to prepare the long-dormant warships for battle. The Aegis Fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Where other civilizations had favored sleek, elegant designs, Earth's hidden ships were built for unyielding purpose. Their hulls, forged from titanium-adamantium alloys, glinted like obsidian under the stark light of Mars' twin moons. Each vessel bristled with weaponry, from plasma turrets to quantum missile launchers. At the heart of their arsenal lay the Andromeda cannons, weapons capable of tearing through planetary shields and laying waste to entire fleets. Admiral Sterling stood on the bridge of the EUS Defiant, the flagship of the Aegis Fleet. Her fingers danced over the controls as she watched the systems come online. It was a moment she had both dreaded and anticipated for decades. This fleet was built to protect humanity from extinction, she said to her crew, her voice firm. And now it will serve that purpose. Prepare for launch. The Defiant, followed by dozens of sister ships, lifted off the Martian surface in a synchronized ballet of light and fire. Civilians across Earth and its colonies looked to the skies, their despair turning to awe as the forgotten might of humanity's ingenuity ascended into the heavens. The fleet formed a defensive perimeter above Earth, awaiting the order to strike. Meanwhile, back at the Galactic Tribunal, the alien counselors watched the broadcast of Earth's preparations with growing unease. Many dismissed it as a bluff. Others, like Councillor Vren, a pragmatic leader from the Zarine cluster, recognized the danger. "We've made a grave error," Vren said during an emergency session. "The humans are not like other species. They do not submit easily, and when provoked, they fight with the fury of desperation. We must de-escalate before this spirals out of control." But the Tribunal's arrogance outweighed its caution. They issued a public statement condemning Earth's actions and reaffirming the Tribunal's authority. To humanity, it was the equivalent of a gauntlet thrown. Admiral Sterling stood before her assembled officers, the holographic map of the galaxy, illuminating their faces. "The Tribunal has underestimated us for the last time," she declared. "We will strike directly at their core, not to destroy, but to ensure they can never threaten us again. This isn't just about retaliation, it's about survival. Prepare the fleet. Humanity's reckoning begins now." The room erupted in a chorus of acknowledgements. The officers dispersed, each carrying the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders. As Sterling turned back to the map, her gaze settled on the glowing dot marking the Tribunal's home system. This would not be a battle for glory, but for justice, for Jace Keller, and for every life that would never again be cut short by the arrogance of alien overlords. The silence before a storm is never truly quiet. Across Earth's bustling cities and orbital colonies, a hum of activity echoed through every corridor and street. News of the Aegis Fleet's activation spread like wildfire. The public, initially divided on how to respond to the Galactic Tribunal's overreach, now rallied behind their leaders. A collective resolve united humanity. They would not be silenced, and they would not forgive. At the United Defense Command's central hub, an underground fortress buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice, the air buzzed with urgency. Massive hollow displays projected real-time feeds of the Aegis Fleet's reactivation. Engineers worked tirelessly to bring the warship's systems online, and military strategists gathered around holographic maps of the galaxy, planning their next moves. General Elias Ward, the de facto leader of Earth's defense forces, stood at the center of it all, a towering figure with a sharp gaze and a voice that carried authority. Ward was both respected and feared. He addressed the assembled officers and scientists with his usual air of calm decisiveness. "The Tribunal has underestimated us for centuries, he began, his tone steady but edged with steel. They saw our diplomacy as weakness and our restraint as submission. That ends today. Humanity will show them the strength that lies beneath. Admiral Kara Sterling, now aboard the EUS Defiant, appeared on a nearby holoscreen. Her expression was grim but determined. "The fleet is nearly ready, General," she reported. "Final system checks are underway. Weapons, shields, and propulsion systems are operational. We'll be battle-ready within the hour." Ward nodded. "Good. Once the fleet is fully operational, we proceed to Phase 1, a demonstration of force. We'll make it clear to the Tribunal that Earth is not to be trifled with." The strategy was simple but bold. The Aegis Fleet would jump to the edge of the Tribunal's central system, close enough to be detected, but far enough to avoid immediate engagement. From there, they would broadcast a message to the galaxy, a declaration of Earth's defiance and a warning to those who sought to challenge them. As preparations continued, the mood among the fleet's crew was a mix of excitement and apprehension. For many, this was their first deployment in active combat. Lieutenant Ava Monroe, a young pilot assigned to the Defiance fighter squadron, stood in the ship's hangar bay, inspecting her sleek starfighter. The aircraft, dubbed the Thunderbird, was a marvel of engineering. Fast, agile, and armed to the teeth. "Think we're ready for this?" Ava's squadmate, Ensign Noah Park, asked as he joined her by the fighter. Ava glanced at him, a wry smile on her lips. "Ready or not, we don't have a choice. The Tribunal crossed the line. They'll see what happens when you push humanity too far." Noah nodded, his expression somber. "I just hope we're as prepared as Command thinks we are. Those alien ships aren't going to go down without a fight." Nearby, Chief Engineer Lena Torres supervised the final checks on the ship's systems. Torres had spent her entire career maintaining and upgrading the fleet's vessels, but even she was awed by the sheer power of the Aegis ships. The Defiance Andromeda cannons alone had the potential to level entire cities, and its stealth systems rendered it nearly invisible to most detection methods. "We've got the best tech in the galaxy," Torres said to her team, her voice brimming with confidence. "Let's make sure it's ready to shine. No malfunctions, no excuses. This mission has to be flawless." As the final preparations were underway, a ripple of tension spread across the fleet. The Tribunal had responded to Earth's declaration with a broadcast of their own. On every screen across the galaxy, the face of High Chancellor Dren, a gaunt, pale-skinned alien with piercing silver eyes, appeared. His tone was as cold as the vacuum of space. "Earth's defiance is noted," he said. "But let me remind you, the Tribunal governs the galaxy for the greater good. Your reckless actions endanger not just your species, but the delicate balance of peace we have maintained for millennia. Surrender now or face the consequences." The message was met with outrage on Earth. Across the planet and its colonies, protests erupted, citizens demanding justice for Jace Keller and an end to the Tribunal's tyranny. The people's anger only fueled the resolve of Earth's leaders. And the Aegis Fleet. On the Defiance Bridge, Admiral Sterling watched the Chancellor's broadcast with a mixture of contempt and determination. "Peace?" she muttered. "They call it peace when they execute a child in cold blood." Her voice rose as she addressed her crew. "We will show them the cost of their so-called peace. Helm, prepare the jump coordinates. It's time to send a message." The Aegis Fleet moved into formation, each ship's engines glowing with a fierce blue light. From the command ship, Admiral Sterling gave the order. "All ships, initiate FTL jump. Destination, Tribunal space." The stars blurred into streaks of light as the fleet entered faster than light travel. Moments later, they emerged at the edge of the Tribunal's central system. The sight before them was both awe-inspiring and foreboding. a sprawling nexus of planets, orbital stations and defense platforms, all radiating the power and influence of the galaxy's ruling body. Admiral Sterling activated the fleet-wide comms, her voice steady and resolute. "This is Admiral Kara Sterling of the Earth United Defense Command. To the Galactic Tribunal, your reign of oppression ends today. You have committed atrocities against our people and underestimated our resolve. We demand justice for the life you took and assurance that no human will ever face such cruelty again. If you refuse, know that the Aegis Fleet stands ready to defend humanity, whatever the cost." The broadcast echoed across the system, reaching every corner of the Tribunal's territory. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the Tribunal's fleet began to mobilize. From her vantage point on the Defiance bridge, Sterling observed the enemy's response. Massive warships, bristling with weaponry, moved into defensive positions. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, and energy shields shimmered to life around key installations. "They're not backing down," said Commander David Lorne, Sterling's second-in-command. Sterling's gaze hardened. "Neither are we. All ships hold position. Let them make the first move." As the standoff began, the galaxy held its breath. The Tribunal had made a grave miscalculation in underestimating humanity's will to fight. Now, with the Aegis Fleet poised for battle, Earth was ready to show the universe the true strength of its people. The Tribunal's central system, a jewel of interconnected worlds and orbital stations, glimmered with defiance. The mobilization of their fleet was swift, but Earth's Aegis Fleet, now perched at the system's edge, remained a silent, looming predator. Tension filled the void of space as both sides waited for the other to make the first move. Admiral Kara Sterling stood at the helm of the EUS Defiant, her face etched with calm determination. Around her, the bridge crew operated with a blend of precision and unease, each member acutely aware of the storm brewing just beyond the ship's hull. "Status report," Sterling commanded, her gaze fixed on the holographic projection of the Tribunal's fleet. Hundreds of vessels, from nimble fighter craft to imposing dreadnoughts, moved into formation, their energy shields glowing faintly against the darkness of space. "Their fleet is fully deployed," replied Commander David Lorne, her second-in-command. He gestured to the display, where enemy ships began creating a perimeter around the central planet. No signs of an attack yet, but their movements suggest a defensive stance. Sterling nodded, her lips tightening. "They're trying to intimidate us. Let's show them it won't work." She turned to the communications officer. "Send the signal to the fleet. Begin Phase 1. Across the Aegis Fleet, the order was received. Each ship responded with swift precision, their engines flaring to life as they adjusted positions. The fleet formed an imposing spearhead, with the Defiant at its tip. Though Earth's forces were fewer in number, the technological edge of the Aegis Fleet made them a formidable adversary. Phase 1 was a calculated show of strength. Smaller vessels moved ahead, releasing advanced reconnaissance drones that began scanning the Tribunal's fleet. The drones emitted pulses of light and data streams, analyzing shield frequencies, weapon systems and formations. It was both a strategic maneuver and a psychological tactic, designed to unnerve the Tribunal's forces. "Their commanders must be sweating by now," Lieutenant Ava Monroe quipped from the cockpit of her Thunderbird fighter. Ava's squadron had been deployed as part of the forward recon effort, their sleek craft weaving effortlessly between the drones. "Focus, Monroe," came the sharp response from her squad leader, Captain Ethan Voss. "We're here to gather intel, not trade banter." Ava rolled her eyes, but complied, guiding her fighter through the dense formation of drones. The tension in her chest grew as she approached the outer edge of the Tribunal's fleet. Though no shots had been fired, the oppressive presence of the enemy vessels was enough to set her nerves on edge. Back on the Defiant, Admiral Sterling watched the unfolding operation with a critical eye. "Lorne, what's the Tribunal's response to our recon efforts?" "Minimal," Lorne replied, scanning his console. "They've tightened their formation, but they're holding fire. Either they're waiting for us to overextend, or they don't want to escalate yet." Sterling's expression darkened. "They're buying time," she said. "They think reinforcements are on the way. We can't let them drag this out." Just as she spoke, a warning alarm blared across the bridge. The holographic display shifted, highlighting a section of the Tribunal's fleet. Several ships had begun advancing, their weapon systems powering up. "Incoming fire!" Lorne shouted. The Tribunal's first strike was sudden and precise. Streams of plasma bolts and missile salvos streaked through the void, targeting Earth's forward recon units. The Aegis Fleet's advanced countermeasures sprang to life. Automated defense turrets intercepted missiles mid-flight, and energy shields absorbed the brunt of the plasma fire. "Evasive maneuvers," Sterling barked. "Bring the fleet into defensive formation." The recon drones and fighters scattered, retreating to the safety of the main fleet. Despite their initial losses, Earth's forces responded with calculated precision. The Defiant unleashed a barrage of counterfire, its Andromeda cannons lighting up the battlefield with devastating beams of energy. The sheer power of the cannons sent shockwaves rippling through space, forcing the advancing Tribunal ships to falter. Ava Monroe, now back within the protective formation of the fleet, couldn't help but marvel at the display. "They weren't kidding about those cannons," she muttered. "Eyes on your target, Lieutenant," Captain Voss snapped. This fight's far from over. As the Tribunal's initial assault waned, Admiral Sterling saw her opportunity. "Commander Lorne, deploy the Phantom Wing." Lorne's eyes widened slightly. "The Phantom Wing, ma'am. Are we ready to reveal that asset?" Sterling's gaze was unyielding. "Now is the time. Deploy them." The Phantom Wing was one of Earth's most secretive advancements, a squadron of experimental stealth fighters equipped with cloaking technology and precision weaponry. As the order was given, a section of the Defiance hangar bay opened, releasing a dozen sleek, angular craft. The Phantoms vanished into the darkness, their cloaking systems rendering them invisible to both the naked eye and enemy sensors. "Phantom Wing is away," Lorne confirmed, his tone tinged with anticipation. The Tribunal's fleet remained unaware of the Phantom's approach until it was too late. Emerging from the shadows like wraiths, the stealth fighters struck key targets with pinpoint accuracy. Enemy shield generators and weapon emplacements were obliterated in a series of coordinated strikes, leaving the Tribunal's formation vulnerable. On the Tribunal's flagship, High Chancellor Dren watched the chaos unfold with a growing sense of dread. "What is this sorcery?" he hissed, his silver eyes narrowing. "How are they bypassing our defenses?" An aide scurried to his side, panic evident in their voice. "Chancellor, their technology is unlike anything we've encountered. Our sensors can't track their movements." Dren's jaw tightened. "Rally the fleet. Focus fire on their command ship. We must cripple their leadership." Back on the Defiant, Sterling anticipated the counterattack. The holographic display showed dozens of enemy ships converging on their position. "They're targeting us," Lorne said. Sterling's lips curled into a determined smile. "Good. Let them come. All ships prepare for close quarters engagement and fire up the shield disruptors. It's time to show them what the Aegis Fleet is really capable of." The bridge crew sprang into action, their movements synchronized, like a well-oiled machine. The Defiant and its sister ships advanced, their weapons blazing as they met the Tribunal's forces head-on. Explosions lit up the void as the two fleets clashed, each side fighting with ferocity and desperation. Amidst the chaos, the Phantom Wing continued to sow havoc behind enemy lines, their stealthy attacks leaving the Tribunal ships disoriented and vulnerable. For the first time, the Tribunal's commanders began to realize the scale of their miscalculation. Humanity was not just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. The battlefield above the Galactic Tribunal's central system had transformed into a tempest of fire and steel. The Aegis Fleet surged forward like an unstoppable tide, its warships navigating a gauntlet of plasma fire, missiles, and energy beams. Despite the overwhelming odds, the resolve of Earth's forces never wavered. Admiral Kara Sterling stood tall on the bridge of the EUS Defiant, her unwavering gaze fixed on the holographic display projecting the chaos outside. "Report!" she commanded, her voice cutting through the controlled frenzy of the bridge. "Commander." Lorne, her second-in-command, responded immediately. "Phantom Wing is still operational, Admiral. They've taken out 6 shield stations and 4 weapons platforms. Tribunal forces are shifting resources to try and locate them, but they're blind. And the rest of the fleet, holding, but under heavy fire. The Arclight and Vanguard have sustained critical damage. We've lost 3 escort frigates." Lorne paused, then added with a grim expression, "Tribunal reinforcements are en route. ETA 20 minutes. Sterling's jaw tightened. The Tribunal's home system was more fortified than anticipated. Every second counted if humanity was to strike a decisive blow before the reinforcements tipped the scales. She turned to the fleet-wide comm system, her voice steady but urgent. "This is Admiral Sterling to all ships. Stay focused and hold. Formation, remember why we fight. Humanity's future depends on us. We will not falter." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations. Determination burned in their eyes as they returned to their stations, pushing past exhaustion and fear. They had trained for this moment, to fight not just for survival, but for justice. As the battle raged deep within the Defiance lower decks, Chief Engineer Lena Torres worked tirelessly with her team to stabilize the ship's systems. Sparks flew from overloaded conduits, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt circuitry. Torres' voice rang out above the cacophony. "Divert power from auxiliary systems to shields. We can't afford another direct hit to the starboard." Aside, one of her junior engineers hesitated. "But ma'am, that'll leave the stealth systems offline." "Do it," Torres barked. "We're not sneaking away from this fight. We're surviving it." Up above, the Defiant's main guns roared to life, launching a fusillade of quantum missiles at an approaching Tribunal cruiser. The enemy ship's shields flared under the assault before collapsing, leaving its hull vulnerable to a devastating follow-up from the Andromeda cannons. The Tribunal cruiser erupted in a fiery explosion, debris scattering across the void. Admiral Sterling allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before issuing her next command. "Deploy the echelon formation. Concentrate fire on their capital ships. If we can take out their command vessels, their forces will crumble." The Aegis Fleet shifted its strategy, smaller ships darting forward to harass the enemy, while the larger vessels targeted the Tribunal's flagship and its escorts. The tactical maneuvering was precise, each ship working in concert to exploit the gaps in the Tribunal's defenses. Meanwhile, aboard the Tribunal's flagship, the exemplar, High Chancellor Dren, watched the battle unfold with mounting frustration. His silver eyes blazed as he paced the command deck, issuing sharp orders to his subordinates. "Redirect all fire to their command ship," he snarled. "If we eliminate their leader, the rest will scatter." One of his aides hesitated. "Chancellor, their technology is outmatching ours at every turn. Even our dreadnoughts are struggling to breach their shields." Dren's voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "Then unleash the Viridium Lance. Let them see the true power of the Tribunal." A hush fell over the bridge. The Viridium Lance was a weapon of last resort, a massive energy cannon capable of obliterating entire fleets. Its activation was a tacit admission of desperation, a line the Tribunal rarely dared to cross. "Sir, activating the lance risks destabilizing the station's core," the aide warned. Dren's glare could have melted steel. "Do it." The Exemplar's hull groaned as the Viridium lance powered up, drawing energy from the station's core. The weapon's targeting systems locked onto the Defiant, its barrel glowing with an eerie green light. On the Defiant's bridge, alarms blared as the incoming threat was detected. "Admiral, they're targeting us with a superweapon," Lorne shouted. Sterling's mind raced. There was no time to evade. The lance's range and power made it nearly impossible to escape once locked. She slammed a fist on the console. "All power to forward shields. Prepare countermeasures," she ordered. The Defiant shield generators whined as they pushed to maximum capacity. At the same time, Torres and her engineering team worked frantically to reroute power and stabilize the overloaded systems. "This is it," Sterling muttered. "If we survive this, we're taking that weapon out." The Viridium lance fired, unleashing a beam of energy that tore through space, its brightness outshining the nearby stars. The Defiant's shields flared under the onslaught, holding for agonizing seconds before shattering. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as hull breaches were reported across multiple decks. "Damage report," Sterling shouted, gripping the edge of her console to steady herself. "Shields are down, multiple systems offline, but we're still operational," Lorne replied, his face pale but determined. "Admiral, we can't take another hit like that," Sterling nodded grimly. "Then we won't give them the chance. Target the Exemplar's main power core. All ships, focus fire." The Aegis Fleet responded with a ferocity born of desperation and resolve. The Defiant, though battered, led the charge, its Andromeda cannons unleashing devastating salvos. The Tribunal's flagship reeled under the assault, its shields failing, as explosions rippled along its hull. In a final, desperate maneuver, the Defiant's crew deployed a prototype weapon, the Hyperion Pulse. The device emitted a concentrated burst of electromagnetic energy, overloading the Exemplar's systems and rendering it defenseless. As the Tribunal's flagship drifted, powerless, Admiral Sterling gave the order. "End this." The Aegis Fleet's combined firepower converged on the Exemplar, reducing it to a fiery husk. The destruction of their command ship sent shockwaves through the Tribunal's forces, who began to retreat in disarray. Silence fell over the battlefield as the last of the Tribunal's ships fled. On the Defiance bridge, cheers erupted among the crew, but Sterling's expression remained somber. "We've won the battle," she said quietly, "but the war is far from over." Lorne nodded. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Sterling's gaze hardened. "We push forward. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about ensuring that no one ever underestimates humanity again." As the Aegis Fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of their campaign, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Tribunal's invincibility had been shattered, and Earth had risen as a force to be reckoned with. But the cost of victory was high, and the path ahead would be fraught with peril. Humanity's fight for justice had only just begun. In the aftermath of their decisive victory at the Galactic Tribunal's core system, the Aegis Fleet regrouped in orbit around a neutral star system. The battered, yet triumphant fleet shimmered in the soft glow of twin suns, their hulls bearing the scars of the fierce battle. The Defiant, though damaged, remained a symbol of humanity's resilience and resolve. Admiral Kara Sterling stood on the bridge, her expression grim as she studied a holographic map of the galaxy. The Tribunal's forces were scattered but far from defeated. Reinforcements would undoubtedly regroup, and retaliation was a certainty. Sterling knew humanity's survival depended on more than just its own strength. They needed allies. "Commander Lorne, what's the status of our diplomatic outreach?" she asked, her tone sharp but steady. Lorne stepped forward, his posture as rigid as ever. We've sent emissaries to the major oppressed species under the Tribunal's control. The Karathi, the Velar, and the Draskan. Early reports indicate mixed responses. Many are wary of the Tribunal's wrath, but some are showing signs of interest. Sterling nodded. Fear is a powerful weapon, but so is hope. Let's give them a reason to believe they can stand with us. Prepare the fleet to rendezvous at the Karathi homeworld. They've suffered the Tribunal's tyranny for centuries. If we can secure their alliance, it will send a message to the galaxy. The bridge crew sprang into action, issuing commands and calculating jump coordinates. Sterling turned back to the map, her mind racing. The Karathi were known for their fierce warriors and advanced ground tactics. If convinced, they would be a formidable ally. But convincing them would not be easy. The Aegis Fleet emerged from hyperspace, above Korath Prime, a world shrouded in swirling storms and volcanic activity. Despite its inhospitable surface, the Karathi thrived in massive subterranean cities, their civilization shaped by a harsh and unforgiving environment. Admiral Sterling stood before the comm station, addressing the Karathi Council directly. Their holographic forms materialized, each figure adorned in ceremonial armor, their expressions guarded. "I am Admiral Kara Sterling of Earth," she began, her voice firm but measured. "We come in peace, seeking an alliance. Together, we can overthrow the Tribunal and secure freedom for all species under their control." The central figure, a towering Karathi named High Warlord Drakar, narrowed his eyes. "Humans, you speak of freedom, yet you bring war to our doorstep. Why should we risk annihilation for your cause?" Sterling took a step forward, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "Because the Tribunal's oppression doesn't end with us. You've endured their tyranny for centuries, fighting a war of attrition while your people suffer. Humanity offers you more than words. We've already struck a blow against the Tribunal, and we have the means to finish the fight. Join us, and we'll stand together as equals." Drakar's expression remained unreadable as he exchanged glances with the other council members. After a tense silence, he spoke again. "Show us proof of your strength. Words are wind. If you truly possess the power to challenge the Tribunal, demonstrate it." Sterling's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned to Lorne and nodded. Moments later, a recording of the battle at the Tribunal's core system played, showcasing the Aegis Fleet's technological prowess and tactical brilliance. The footage concluded with the destruction of the Tribunal flagship, the Exemplar, reduced to smoldering wreckage. When the display faded, Drakar leaned back in his seat, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "Impressive, but power alone will not win this war. The Tribunal's reach is vast, their resources limitless. What can you offer that they cannot?" Sterling's voice softened, carrying a note of conviction. "A future where your children aren't born into servitude. A galaxy where every species can determine its own destiny. Stand with us, and we'll build that future together." After hours of deliberation, the Karathi Council reached their decision. Drakar's hologram reappeared before the Defiance crew, his expression resolute. "The Karathi will fight alongside humanity," he declared. "Our warriors are at your command, and our forges will produce the weapons of liberation. Together, we will break the Tribunal's chains." A cheer erupted across the Defiance bridge, but Sterling remained composed. She knew this was only the beginning. The Karathi's alliance was a critical step, but the road ahead would demand even greater sacrifices. As the fleet integrated the Karathi forces, new battle plans were drawn. The Aegis Fleet's engineers collaborated with Karathi smiths, combining human technology with Karathi craftsmanship to create devastating new weapons and armor. Meanwhile, Drakar and Sterling worked side by side to strategize their next move. Liberating the Velar, a species renowned for their scientific ingenuity but long subdued by the Tribunal. Unbeknownst to the fledgling alliance, the Tribunal had begun regrouping. From their hidden strongholds, they gathered fleets of warships and mobilized loyalist forces, determined to crush the rebellion before it gained momentum. Intelligence reports trickled in, warning of an impending attack on Korath Prime. Sterling convened an emergency meeting with her senior officers and Drakkar. "The Tribunal won't let this alliance go unchallenged," she said, her tone grim. "They'll strike hard and fast to send a message." Drakkar slammed a fist onto the table. "Let them come. The Korathi do not cower before invaders." Sterling met his fiery gaze with a level 1. "Courage alone won't win this battle. We need to outthink them, use their arrogance against them." The plan was set. As the Tribunal's fleet descended, on Korath Prime, they were met with fierce resistance. Korathi ground forces fortified key positions while the Aegis Fleet engaged the enemy in orbit. Using the combined tactics and technology of both species, the Alliance outmaneuvered and outgunned the Tribunal at every turn. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, the Tribunal's forces were forced to retreat, their losses staggering. The victory solidified the Alliance and sent a clear message to the galaxy. Resistance was not only possible, but effective. News of the victory spread like wildfire, inspiring other oppressed species to consider joining the fight. One by one, emissaries from the Velar, the Draskan, and even some disillusioned Tribunal factions reached out to the Alliance. The rebellion grew, its ranks swelling with warriors, scientists, and strategists united by a common cause. Admiral Sterling stood on the Defiance bridge, gazing out at the assembled fleet. Once a lone force, humanity's defiance had ignited a galactic uprising, but she knew the hardest battles were yet to come. The Tribunal's grip on the galaxy would not be easily broken, and their retribution would be merciless. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "The galaxy is watching, and we won't let them down." With the Alliance rallying around a banner of hope and determination, humanity and its newfound allies prepared to take the fight to the Tribunal's doorstep, ready to challenge the tyranny that had oppressed them for far too long. The victory at Korath Prime sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Tribunal's iron grip had been shaken, their reputation for invincibility tarnished by a united front of humanity and its newfound allies. Yet this triumph was only a fleeting moment of respite. Humanity's leaders knew that the Tribunal would not accept defeat quietly. They would regroup, retaliate, and strike back with overwhelming force. Admiral Kara Sterling stood in the command, center of the EUS Defiant, the flagship of the Aegis Fleet. Her gaze remained fixed on the holographic map projected before her, displaying a vast web of Tribunal-controlled territories. Glowing red markers indicated the movements of enemy forces, converging toward a central point. "They're amassing their fleets near the Ardent Nebula," Commander David Lorne reported, his voice taut with urgency. "Our intelligence suggests they're planning a counter-offensive to retake Korath Prime and crush the rebellion before it spreads further." Admiral Sterling nodded, her expression resolute. "If they retake Korath, we lose the foothold we've worked so hard to secure. We cannot let that happen. What's our current fleet strength?" Chief Strategist Lena Torres, now serving as a liaison between engineering and command, stepped forward. "We've integrated 40% of the Korathi fleet into our ranks, but repairs to our own ships are still underway. The Defiant and several others sustained heavy damage during the last engagement. We'll need at least 3 days to reach full operational capacity." Sterling's lips tightened into a thin line. "We don't have 3 days. If the Tribunal's reinforcements reach Korath Prime before we're ready, it's over." "What's the status of the Viridium Lance prototype we seized during the last battle?" Lorne hesitated. "It's still undergoing modifications. We've managed to adapt it to our systems, but its power core is highly unstable." Firing it risks catastrophic failure. "We may not have a choice," Sterling replied, her voice grim. "Get it ready. If the Tribunal wants to bring their entire fleet, we'll give them a demonstration they'll never forget." Light years away, within the depths of the ardent nebula, the Tribunal's high command convened aboard their colossal dreadnought, the Pinnacle. High Chancellor Dren presided over the meeting, his gaunt features illuminated by the cold glow of holographic displays showing the galaxy-wide rebellion and humanity at its heart. "The humans have overstepped their bounds," Dren declared, his voice sharp and icy. "They've emboldened the lesser species with their victories, turning our own subjects against us. This insolence cannot stand." Councillor Zelith, a reptilian strategist with piercing yellow eyes, nodded in agreement. "Our fleet's concentration in the Ardent Nebula will serve as the spearhead of our counter-offensive. Korath Prime must be reclaimed swiftly and decisively. Any resistance must be annihilated." Another councillor, the feline-like Quorn, interjected with a note of caution. "Human ingenuity has surprised us before. Their Aegis Fleet's capabilities far exceed our initial assessments. If we underestimate them again, we risk further embarrassment, or worse." Dren's gaze darkened. "Which is why we will not engage them conventionally. Activate the Perdition Array." A ripple of unease spread through the assembled councillors. The Perdition Array was a forbidden weapon, a relic of a darker era in the Tribunal's history. Capable of destabilizing entire star systems, its use had been outlawed due to its devastating collateral damage. "Chancellor," Quorn began, his tone cautious, "deploying the array would—" "Silence!" Dren snapped, slamming a webbed hand onto the table. "This rebellion threatens the very foundation of our dominion. If we must burn entire systems to crush it, so be it. Prepare the array for deployment." The Aegis Fleet arrived at the fringes of the Ardent Nebula, its ships forming a defensive formation around Korath Prime. The tension among the crew was palpable as reports of the Tribunal's massive fleet continued to pour in. Despite their victories, the odds were stacked heavily against them. Admiral Sterling stood before her assembled officers in the Defiance war room. A holographic projection displayed the Tribunal's fleet movements, their numbers dwarfing humanity's allied. "Horses, this is the fight of our lives," Sterling began, her voice calm but resolute. "The Tribunal thinks they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers and brute force, but we've faced impossible odds before, and we've prevailed because we fight smarter. This time will be no different." She gestured to the holographic map, highlighting key points within the Ardent Nebula. The nebula's electromagnetic storms will disrupt their long-range sensors and communications, leveling the playing field. We'll use hit-and-run tactics to sow chaos in their ranks, targeting their supply lines and command ships. Drakkar, the Karathi High Warlord, pounded his fist on the table. "Let them come. The Karathi will fight to the last warrior. Their blood will flow like rivers." Sterling met his fiery gaze with a nod of respect. "Your warrior's courage is unmatched, Warlord. Together, we will make them regret underestimating us." Before the meeting adjourned, Sterling turned to Lena Torres. "Engineer Torres, I need an update on the Viridium Lance." Torres' expression was grim but determined. "It's operational but unstable. If we fire it, there's a high risk of it overloading and destroying the Defiant." Sterling's jaw tightened. "Understood. If it comes to that, we'll make the sacrifice." The Tribunal's fleet descended upon Korath Prime like an unrelenting tide. Thousands of ships filled the void, their weapons bristling with lethal intent. The Aegis Fleet and its allies met them head-on, their formation a wall of defiance against the overwhelming onslaught. Explosions lit up the darkness as the two fleets clashed, energy beams and missiles crisscrossing in a deadly ballet. The Karathi ground forces held strong against orbital bombardments, their subterranean cities shielded by advanced fortifications. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Sterling coordinated the battle with surgical precision. Focus fire on their command ships, disrupt their chain of command, and throw them into disarray. Lieutenant Ava Monroe, leading a squadron of Thunderbirds, executed daring maneuvers to disable enemy carriers. Her squadron's hit-and-run tactics created openings for the fleet's larger vessels to press the attack. But the tide began to turn when the Tribunal activated the Perdition Array. A massive energy surge rippled through the nebula, destabilizing the battlefield. Entire Karathi ships were vaporized as the weapon unleashed its destructive power. "They've activated a superweapon," Lorne reported, his voice laced with urgency. "If we don't stop it now, Korath Prime will be destroyed." Sterling's decision was immediate. "Prepare the Viridium Lance, target the array." Torres' voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, if we fire the lance, the recoil could tear us apart." Sterling's voice was steady. "Do it. Humanity's survival depends on it." The Defiant aligned with the array, its crew bracing for the inevitable. The Viridium Lance charged, its energy core glowing ominously. As the weapon fired, a searing beam of light pierced through the void, striking the array with devastating force. The weapon erupted in a blinding explosion, its energy dissipating into the nebula. The recoil sent the Defiant reeling, its hull buckling under the strain. Fires broke out across the ship, and alarms blared as the crew scrambled to stabilize. "Critical systems! Damage report!" Sterling shouted, gripping her console. "Severe structural damage," Torres replied, her voice strained. "We're holding but barely." As the array's destruction rippled through the Tribunal's ranks, their fleet began to falter. The Aegis Fleet and its allies seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage. One by one, the Tribunal's ships fell, their formation collapsing into chaos. When the battle finally ended, the void was filled with the wreckage of countless ships. The Tribunal's fleet had been broken, their superweapon destroyed. But the cost was immense. The Defiant drifted in orbit, scarred, but still standing as a testament to humanity's resilience. Admiral Sterling stood on the bridge, surveying the aftermath. "We've won this battle," she said quietly, "but the war is far from over." Drakkar stepped forward, his expression solemn. "Your people fight with honor, Admiral. The Karathi will stand with you until the Tribunal falls." Sterling nodded, determination burning in her eyes. "Then we move forward together." The battle at Korath Prime marked a turning point in the galaxy's history. For the first time, the Galactic Tribunal, once a symbol of unchecked power and domination, had been brought to its knees. The combined forces of humanity and its newfound allies had achieved what many once thought impossible. But as the fires of war dimmed and the smoke cleared, the true challenge began, rebuilding and preparing for the battles yet to come. Admiral Kara Sterling stood on the battered bridge of the EUS Defiant, gazing out at the wreckage floating silently. In orbit around Korath Prime, the Tribunal's fleets were in full retreat, their chain of command shattered and their morale crushed. Yet Sterling's face was marked by neither triumph nor relief. Victory, she knew, was only the beginning. "Admiral," Commander David Lorne said, approaching with a datapad. "Preliminary reports from the fleet. We've sustained heavy casualties. The Arclight is lost, and over 30% of the Karathi forces have been wiped out. Civilian casualties on Korath Prime are significant." He hesitated before adding, "But the Tribunal's forces are in full retreat. Their remaining ships are fleeing beyond the Ardent Nebula." Sterling nodded, her expression grim. "Have we received any transmissions from the Tribunal's leadership?" "None," Lorne replied. "It seems they're consolidating what's left of their fleets in the outer sectors, but intelligence suggests infighting among their council members. They're fractured, Admiral. This is our moment." Sterling turned back to the viewport, her gaze steady. Fractured, yes, but a wounded animal is often the most dangerous. We can't afford to underestimate them. The victory at Korath Prime had galvanized the galaxy. News of the Tribunal's defeat spread like wildfire, reaching oppressed species. Across countless systems, emissaries from the Draskan, Velar, and even dissident factions within the Tribunal itself began to reach out to the fledgling coalition. They saw in humanity not just defiance, but hope, a rare and precious commodity in an age of tyranny. In the following days, the Karate High Warlord Drakkar and Admiral Sterling co-chaired an emergency council aboard the Defiant. Delegates from newly joined species filled the war room, their voices a mix of cautious optimism and lingering fear. The Tribunal will return, warned General Velkor of the Draskan. The reptilian commander's scaled visage reflected the scars of countless battles. They will regroup and they will strike with a fury that none of us have faced before. Then we must strike first, countered High Warlord Drakkar, his booming voice filling the chamber. We cannot give them the time to rebuild. The Korathi stand ready to take the fight to their core systems. Sterling raised a hand, quieting the room. We cannot afford reckless aggression, she said, her tone firm. The Tribunal may be weakened, but they're not broken. If we're to win this war, we need more than brute force. We need strategy, unity, and something the Tribunal has never understood. And what is that? Asked Velkor, his tone skeptical. Sterling's gaze swept the room. Hope. The room fell silent. The weight of her words hung in the air, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Slowly, the delegates nodded, their resolve hardening. Unbeknownst to the coalition, the Tribunal had one last weapon hidden in the shadows. In the depths of a black site on the distant moon of Artheon, the remnants of the Tribunal's leadership gathered. High Chancellor Dren, battered and humiliated, addressed his remaining councillors. Humanity's victory at Korath Prime is a stain upon our legacy, he snarled, his voice a venomous hiss. But they have only delayed the inevitable. The Perdition Array may be gone, but we have other means. The galaxy must be reminded of our power. Councillor Zelith, the reptilian strategist, stepped forward. The Zenith Protocol remains operational. It's unconventional, but if deployed, it could end the rebellion in one decisive blow. Dren's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then make it so. If the coalition wishes to challenge the Tribunal, they will learn the price of defiance. Back on the Defiant, Admiral Sterling and her crew received intelligence of the Tribunal's final gambit. A fragment of data, intercepted from a fleeing Tribunal ship, spoke of the Zenith Protocol, a superweapon capable of catastrophic destruction. What do we know about this weapon? Sterling asked, her voice tense. Chief Strategist Lena Torres stepped forward, her expression grim. Not much, Admiral, but the data suggests it's located on Artheon. If activated, it could destabilize entire sectors, wiping out planets and fleets alike. Then we have no choice, Sterling said, her resolve unwavering. We must strike Artheon before the Zenith Protocol can be deployed. This is humanity's chance to end the Tribunal's tyranny once and for all. The room erupted into action. As orders were issued, the Coalition's forces began mobilizing for what would be their most dangerous mission yet. Sterling stood at the center of the chaos, her voice steady as she addressed the assembled leaders. We didn't ask for this war, she said, but we will end it together. As the Coalition's fleet prepared for its final push, the galaxy held its breath. For the first time, species from across the stars stood united, their shared determination burning brighter than the stars themselves. The Tribunal's days of unchecked power were numbered, and aboard the Defiant, Admiral Sterling gazed out at the fleet she had helped forge. It was a fragile alliance, born from desperation and loss, but it was also something greater. It was hope. a dawn breaking through the darkness. Humanity had proven that even in the face of unimaginable odds, the will to fight for justice could never be extinguished. And as the engines of the Aegis Fleet roared to life, the galaxy braced for the final battle, a battle that would decide the fate of countless worlds. The fight was far from over. But for the first time in generations, victory felt within reach.